The mountain wind howled like a wounded beast, driving sheets of snow against the warped boards of the small log cabin. Ada Whitfield huddled closer to the dying embers in the stone hearth, her empty stomach cramping from days of rationed meals. The meager teacher's salary had run thin, and the general store in Dusty Creek was 3 days away through the blizzard. She pulled the threadbare quilt tighter around her shoulders, remembering how different winter had been in Boston. There, coal fires burned bright in proper furnaces, and hot meals appeared regularly on dining tables covered with Irish linen. But Boston was behind her now, a city that had cast her out with whispered accusations and ruined reputation. One rejected proposal from a wealthy school patron had transformed into scandalous rumors of impropriety. Her teaching credentials, once a source of pride, had been dragged through mud until no respectable institution would have her. The West had seemed like salvation then, a place where people cared more about what you could do than what others said about you. Or so she'd hoped. A horse's distressed whinny cut through the wind's fury. Ada lifted her head, listening. There it was again, closer now, mixed with the irregular beat of hooves stumbling through deep snow. She pushed herself up from the rickety chair and moved to the door, pressing her ear against the cold wood. Silence. Then a heavy thud, like a sack of grain hitting the ground. Ada's fingers trembled as she lifted the latch. The wind nearly tore the door from her hands, sending a blast of snow into the cabin. Through the white chaos, she saw a dark shape sprawled face down in the drift beside her woodpile. A horse stood nearby, reins tangled in a bare sage bush, its sides heaving with exhaustion. The shape in the snow didn't move. Years of tending to sick students and injured farmhands back east took over. Ada grabbed her heaviest shawl and plunged into the storm. The cold hit her like a physical blow, stealing her breath. She dropped to her knees beside the fallen rider, her hands already checking for signs of life. A pulse weak but steady fluttered beneath her fingers at his neck. She rolled him partially over, gasping at the dark stain spreading across his coat near the left shoulder. Blood. Too much blood. His face was pale beneath the stubble, lips blue with cold. A gash above his right temple had painted half his face crimson. "I'm getting you inside," she said, though she doubted he could hear her. "Don't you dare give up on me." The horse whinnied again, dancing nervously. Ada struggled to her feet and grabbed the reins, speaking in the soothing tones she'd learned from her father's stable hands long ago. "Easy, boy, easy now. I need your help." She looped the reins around the man's chest, under his arms. It took 3 attempts to get the makeshift harness right, her fingers numb and clumsy. Then she clicked her tongue and tugged the horse forward. "Come on, just to the door. That's all I ask." The horse, a sturdy paint with 4 white socks, seemed to understand. It took slow, careful steps, dragging its master through the snow. Ada guided them, falling twice when her feet slipped on hidden ice. Each time she got up, determined. This man would not die in her dooryard, not if she could help it. At the threshold, the real challenge began. The horse couldn't enter the cabin, and Ada wasn't strong enough to drag a full-grown man inside alone. She unhitched the reins and tried lifting him by the shoulders. Pain shot through her back. She tried again, managing to pull him a few inches before her strength gave out. "Think, Ada," she muttered, looking around desperately. Her eyes landed on the old door she'd removed from the root cellar last month. Yes, that would work. She fetched the door, laying it beside the unconscious man. Rolling him onto it took every ounce of strength she possessed, but finally he was positioned. Then, inch by agonizing inch, she dragged the makeshift sled across her floor until he was far enough inside to close the door against the storm. The sudden quiet felt almost oppressive. Ada leaned against the wall, chest heaving, before remembering that every second counted. She stoked the fire with the last of her good wood, then lit her only lantern. In its flickering light, she got her first clear look at her unexpected patient. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 30, with sun-weathered skin that spoke of years working outdoors. Dark hair fell across his forehead, matted with blood from the head wound. His clothes, though blood-stained and torn, were well made. This was no drifter. Ada cut away his coat and shirt with her sewing scissors, revealing the bullet wound just below his left collarbone. The bullet was still lodged inside. She could feel it when she gently probed the area. He groaned, but didn't wake. "Small mercies," Ada whispered. She'd extracted a bullet once before, from a student who'd been accidentally shot during a hunting expedition, but that had been with proper tools and clean bandages, not in a freezing cabin with kitchen implements. She did what she could. Her mother's silver-handled knife went into the fire until the blade glowed. Snow melted in her only pot provided water for cleaning. She sacrificed half her precious bottle of whiskey meant for medicinal purposes to clean the wound as best she could. Her hands steadied as she worked, finding that calm place inside where panic couldn't reach. The bullet came free after what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. More blood flowed, but not the bright arterial spray she'd feared. Ada packed the wound with strips torn from her petticoat, then used her finest silk thread to stitch it closed. Her embroidery skills, learned in more genteel times, served a grimmer purpose now. The man stirred as she tied off the last stitch. His hand shot up, catching her wrist in a grip that would leave bruises, his eyes a startling green even in the lamplight fixed on hers with desperate intensity. "Have to warn them," he rasped. "Hale's men at Devil's Wash." "Shh," Ada said firmly. "You're safe now. Rest." His grip loosened, but didn't release entirely. "The ranch! They'll think I'm dead. They'll attack." Who will attack what ranch? But his eyes rolled back, and he slipped into unconsciousness again. Ada carefully extracted her wrist and turned her attention to the head wound. This proved easier to clean and bandage, though she worried about damage she couldn't see. Head injuries were tricky, unpredictable. When she'd done all she could, Ada sank onto the floor beside him, her back against the wall. Outside, the wind continued its assault on her little cabin. Inside, the fire crackled, and her patient's breathing slowly steadied. She'd used the last of her clean cloth for bandages and most of her firewood to keep him warm. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: fever, infection, the possibility that whoever shot him might come looking. But for now, they were alive, both of them, against the odds. Ada looked at the stranger's face, peaceful in unconsciousness despite the pallor of blood loss. She didn't know his name or his story, but she'd pulled him from death's threshold, in the wild isolation of the Montana mountains. That created a bond whether either of them wanted it or not. "You'd better be worth the trouble, mister," she said softly, pulling her knees to her chest for warmth. "Because I just used my last good petticoat on you." The wind screamed louder. As if in response, Ada closed her eyes and leaned her head back, keeping one hand on the stranger's wrist to monitor his pulse. She'd stay awake as long as she could, watching for signs of fever or distress. In the morning, if they both survived the night, she'd figure out what came next. For now, this was enough two souls sheltering together while winter raged outside, bound by the simple human act of refusing to let death win. The fire burned lower. Ada fetted a chair leg. Then another. Furniture could be replaced. Lives could not. As the night deepened and the storm showed no signs of abating, she found herself humming softly, an old hymn her mother used to sing. The stranger's breathing seemed to ease at the sound. Perhaps that was her imagination. Perhaps not. In the wilderness, on a night like this, even small comforts mattered. Ada pulled her shawl closer and continued her quiet vigil, guardian to a man whose name she didn't even know. Dawn brought fever, as Ada had feared. The stranger tossed restlessly on the makeshift pallet she'd arranged near the hearth, muttering broken words that painted a picture of violence and desperation. "Water rights," he gasped. "Can't let him. The dam." Then clearer, with more anguish. Pa, I'm sorry. Should have listened. Ada bathed his burning forehead with snow-cooled cloths, her movements efficient despite her exhaustion. She dozed fitfully through the night, jerking awake each time his breathing changed. Now, with pale light filtering through the frost-covered window, she could better assess their situation. Her medicine supplies were pathetically low, some willow bark for fever, a tin of carbolic salve, and the remaining whiskey. She steeped the willow bark into a bitter tea, managing to get a few spoonfuls between his cracked lips. His face contorted at the taste, but he swallowed. The wind had died to a whisper, leaving behind mountainous drifts that blocked her door halfway up. Even if she wanted to go for help, travel was impossible. They were truly alone. She studied her patient in the morning light. His features, beneath the fever flush and stubble, were strong a straight nose, firm jaw, and laugh lines around his eyes that suggested a man who smiled often when not fighting for his life. His hands, resting on the blanket, were calloused from rope work. Everything about him spoke of hard labor and outdoor living. Needing more supplies, Ada reluctantly searched his saddlebags, which she'd dragged inside with great effort the night before. She found dried beef, hardtack, a near-full bottle of whiskey, blessings all. There was also ammunition, a leather pouch of tobacco, and in the very bottom, a letter addressed to Luke McKenna, Double Bar M Ranch. Luke, at least she had a name now. The letter was from his father, she realized, though she didn't read beyond the greeting. Private correspondence was sacred, even in desperate circumstances. She returned it to the saddlebag and focused on what mattered, keeping Luke McKenna alive. The second night was worse. His fever spiked dangerously, and he thrashed so violently she feared he'd tear his stitches. She practically lay across him to keep him still, whispering whatever soothing nonsense came to mind. He called for his mother, cursed someone named Hale with creative profanity, and once grabbed her hand so tightly she thought the bones might crack. "Please," he begged, his green eyes wide but unseeing. "Don't let them poison the water, the cattle, the families downstream." "I won't," Ada promised, having no idea what she was promising. "Rest now. Save your strength." By the third morning, she was running on pure determination. The fever had broken near dawn, leaving Luke weak but lucid. She was grinding the last of her coffee beans when she heard him stir. "Water," he croaked. She helped him drink, supporting his head with one arm. His eyes focused on her face with obvious confusion. "You're safe," she said before he could ask. "You collapsed near my cabin 3 nights ago. You've been shot." He absorbed this slowly, then tried to sit up. Pain knocked him flat again, and he cursed, then immediately apologized. "No need for apologies. Mr. McKenna, I've heard worse from my students." His eyes sharpened. "You know my name." "From a letter in your saddlebags? I needed to check for medical supplies." She kept her tone businesslike. "I'm Ada Whitfield. I teach Tot School." "The new teacher at Dusty Creek heard you'd come from back east." His voice was rough but steady. "Folks been wondering why you stay all the way up here instead of in town." Ada busied herself with the coffee to avoid answering directly. "What happened to you? You mentioned someone named Hale." Luke's expression darkened. "Baron Hale owns the biggest spread north of here. He's been trying to force out the smaller ranchers, take control of all the water rights in the valley, built himself an illegal dam upstream, charging folks for what should be free." He paused to catch his breath, and Ada gave him more water. "There's been a drought 2 years running," he continued. "Water's everything out here. My family's ranch has senior rights from a Mexican land grant, legal and binding. Hale wants those rights bad enough to kill for them." "And he tried to kill you?" "His men ambushed me at Devil's Wash. I was checking our irrigation ditches when they opened fire. Winged me good, but Storm, my horse, got me out. Last thing I remember is trying to make it home." His face went pale. "How long did you say I've been here?" 3 nights. Luke struggled up despite the pain, eyes wild. I have to go. If Hale thinks I'm dead, he'll move on the ranch. My mother, my sister. You're not going anywhere. Ada pushed him back firmly. You'll kill yourself trying to ride in this condition? Besides, look outside. He turned his head toward the window, seeing the wall of white. His jaw clenched in frustration. Soon as this clears, we'll figure out how to get you home safely. Until then, you're my patient, and you'll follow my orders. She softened her tone. Tell me about your family. Maybe we can find a way to get word to them. Luke settled back, though tension still corded his neck. The Double Bar M, it's been McKenna land for 30 years. My PA built it from nothing, fought Indians in weather and market crashes. He died 5 years back. Mama runs it now, with my help. My sister Emily is 16, helps with the books. Got about 15 hands, good men mostly. And this Baron Hale came out from Chicago 3 years ago with more money than sense and a notion to be a cattle king. Started buying up land, bringing in hired guns. When folks wouldn't sell, accidents started happening. Poisoned wells, cut fences, missing cattle. His fist clenched. Tom Morrison wouldn't sell. His barn burned with him inside it. Ada felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. The law. Sheriff is in Hale's pocket. Judge, too, probably. Only law that matters out here is what you can defend. She thought of Boston's corruption subtle, dressed in fine clothes and polite words. This was the same evil, just wearing different boots. There has to be legal recourse. The territorial governor. Ma'am, Miss Whitfield, meaning no disrespect. But you're thinking like someone from back east. By the time any territorial authority acted, if they acted at all, Hale would own every drop of water in the valley. Folks would have to pay him or watch their cattle die. The stark reality of it settled over her. She'd fled one kind of injustice only to land in another. So what were you planning before they shot you? Luke studied her for a long moment. Why do you care? You don't know me or my family. This isn't your fight. Ada met his gaze steadily. The moment I dragged you through that door, it became my fight. I don't abandon things I start. Mr. McKenna, so you might as well tell me. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, perhaps, or respect. We've been gathering the smaller ranchers, trying to form a water association, share resources, patrol together, make it harder for Hale to pick us off one by one. I was riding between spreads, building support, when they ambushed you. She poured the coffee. Weak but hot. Drink this. You need strength. He accepted the cup gratefully. You make a fierce nurse, Miss Whitfield. I've had practice. Now, about getting word to your family, is there anyone who might come looking for you? Anyone who knew your route? Maybe. Sam Rodriguez from the Rocking R knew I was heading to check the ditches, if he got worried enough. Luke shook his head. But with this storm, could be a week before anyone can travel. Then we wait. Ada retrieved the dried beef from his supplies, cutting it into small pieces. And you heal. No good to anyone dead. Mr. McKenna. He watched her work, something unreadable in his eyes. Why are you living way up here alone, if you don't mind my asking? Ada's hand stilled for just a moment. Sometimes solitude is preferable to the wrong kind of company. Running from something. Towards something. I prefer to think. A fresh start. Place where past mistakes don't define you. She handed him the plate. Eat slowly. Your stomach won't thank you otherwise. Luke obeyed, chewing thoughtfully. Folks in town been curious about you. Pretty young woman, living alone, keeping to herself, bound to cause talk. Folks everywhere like their gossip, Ada said lightly, though the words stung. Even here, she couldn't escape wagging tongues. That's truth, Luke agreed. Though what I heard was mostly good. How you helped the Swenson boy when he broke his arm. Taught the Martinez girls their letters when their ma took sick. People notice kindness out here. The unexpected validation made her throat tight. She busied herself banking the fire, adding another precious piece of wood. "Thank you," Luke said quietly, "for saving me, for risking your reputation nursing a strange man. I know what that could cost you." Ada turned to face him. "Where I come from, Mr. McKenna, my reputation was destroyed by lies. Here, if it's damaged by truth, by doing what's right, then at least I'll have earned whatever comes." He held her gaze, and she saw understanding there. Whatever had driven her from Boston, he wouldn't press. Out here, everyone had things they'd rather leave buried. "When this is over," he said finally, "the Double Bar M owes you a debt. My family pays its debts. Let's focus on keeping you alive first. Gratitude can wait." Luke smiled then, the first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, revealing the man he must be when not fighting fever and bullet wounds. "Yes, ma'am, though I should warn you, McKennas are stubborn about showing appreciation." "And Whitfields are stubborn about everything," Ada countered. "So, we're well matched." Something flashed in his eyes at her words, a heat that had nothing to do with fever. Ada felt an answering warmth in her cheeks and turned away, suddenly aware of their isolation, their proximity. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the windows, but inside the small cabin, a different kind of tension built not unpleasant, but dangerous in its own way. Ada had fled Boston to escape the complications of men's desires. She couldn't afford to invite new ones. Yet as she settled into her chair to keep watch through another long day, she found herself stealing glances at Luke McKenna's sleeping face, wondering what kind of man he was when bullets weren't flying and storms weren't raging. Wondering, despite herself, what it might be like to not be alone. Luke's strength returned slowly over the next 2 days. Ada watched him struggle with the forced inactivity, saw how his hands clenched when he thought of his family. She rationed their remaining food carefully, giving him the larger portions despite his protests. When he noticed her eating less, his green eyes darkened with understanding. "You were already low on supplies before I showed up," he said, pushing half his dried beef back toward her. "I'll manage." She pushed it back. "You need it more." "Ada." Her given name on his lips stopped her cold. "We share equal, or I don't eat at all." The stubborn set of his jaw told her he meant it. She divided the meat precisely, and they ate in silence that felt heavy with things unsaid. That evening, as firelight painted shadows on the walls, Ada found herself telling him about Boston. Perhaps it was the isolation or the strange intimacy of caring for him, but the words came easier than expected. "Theodore Hartwell," she said, staring into the flames. "That was his name. Wealthy merchant. Patron of the school where I taught. He decided he wanted more than just influence over the curriculum." Luke listened without interrupting, his presence solid and reassuring in the dim cabin. "When I refused his proposition, he told the school board I'd been stealing, selling supplies meant for students. His word against mine, and guess who's carried weight?" She laughed bitterly. "The scandal sheets had a feast. Fallen woman corrupts Boston's youth. My landlady evicted me. No school would hire me. Even my church suggested I might be happier worshiping elsewhere." "Bastard," Luke said quietly. "Pardon my language. No pardon needed. I've called him worse in my mind." She finally met his eyes. "So I took what little money I had left and bought a train ticket as far west as it would take me. Dusty Creek needed a teacher. They didn't ask many questions." "Their gain," Luke said simply, "his loss." The matter-of-fact acceptance in his voice made her throat tight. "You believe me. Just like that." Man who'd lie about that would lie about anything. Besides, he shifted carefully, mindful of his wound. "I've seen how you handle yourself. You don't run from a fight that matters. If you ran from Boston, they gave you no choice. Ada blinked back unexpected tears. Months of carrying the shame alone. And this stranger, no, not stranger anymore, offered understanding without judgment. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for trusting me with it." He was quiet for a moment. "Out here, we judge folks by what they do, not what's done to them. You saved my life, Ada. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." She rose abruptly, needing distance from the warmth in his eyes. "You should rest. Tomorrow we'll try to—" The sound of horses cut through her words. Multiple horses, moving slow through the snow. Ada's blood turned to ice. Luke was already reaching for his gun, face grim. "Douse the lamp! Now!" She obeyed instantly. In the darkness, Luke struggled to his feet, swaying but determined. Ada grabbed his arm. "You can't fight in your condition. Can't let them take me easy either, or hurt you." He pressed the revolver into her hands. "You know how to use this. Point and pull the trigger." "Close enough. Stay behind me." The absurdity of it, him protecting her when he could barely stand, might have been funny in other circumstances. But the horses were closer now, and she heard voices carrying on the cold air. "Tracks lead this way, but the snow's covered most of it. Check that cabin. Boss wants to be sure. Baron Hale's men looking for Luke." A fist hammered on the door. "Open up, we're looking for a man might have passed this way." Ada's mind raced. Luke couldn't hide the cabin was too small. Fighting meant death for both of them. That left... "Just a moment," she called, pitching her voice high and frightened. She shoved Luke toward the corner where she kept her few dresses hanging. "Trust me," she hissed, then louder, "I'm not decent, please. Just wait." She grabbed Luke's blood-stained shirt from where she'd set it aside, stuffing it under her mattress. His coat went behind the wood box. Then she yanked off her own shawl and mussed her hair, fumbling with the buttons of her dress to partially undo them. Luke stared at her, comprehension dawning. "When I open the door, you're my husband," she whispered urgently. "Sick with fever. We've been here together all week." Before he could respond, she pulled him to the bed, her bed, and pushed him down, covering him with every blanket she owned. His face was already flushed with pain and exertion, easily passing for fever. She grabbed a cloth and dunked it in the water basin, laying it across his forehead. "I said wait," she called again, then opened the door a crack, holding her dress closed with one hand. What do you want?" 3 men stood outside, hard-faced and trail-worn. Their leader, a scarred brute with pale eyes, looked her up and down with a sneer that made her skin crawl. Well, what have we here?" He tried to push past her, but she held her ground. "Please, sir, my husband is ill. We don't want trouble." "Husband, huh?" The man's eyes narrowed. "Funny. Folks in town say the pretty teacher lives alone." Ada let her voice tremble. We married just last month. Private ceremony. Haven't had time to tell everyone. What with him taking sick right after..." "From the bed," Luke moaned convincingly. Ada rushed to his side, making a show of adjusting his blankets. "Shh, darling, it's all right." The 3 men crowded into the cabin, eyes searching. One noticed Luke's horse's saddle in the corner. "That's a double-bar M brand." "My husband works for the McKennas," Ada said quickly. "He was bringing me supplies when the fever took him. Been out of his head for days." She wrung her hands. "I've been so frightened." "What if it's the typhoid?" The men took an involuntary step back. Fear of disease was powerful, even among hard cases. "What's his name?" the leader demanded. Ada's mind went blank. Then Luke mumbled something, and she seized on it. Samuel Whitfield. Took my name when we married. His family disowned him for marrying beneath his station." It was thin, but plausible enough. The leader studied them both with suspicious eyes. Then he noticed something that made him smile cruel, the drying rack where Ada had hung a man's shirt. Luke's spare from the saddlebags. washed of trail dust. "Cozy little setup," he said, stepping closer. His hand shot out, grabbing Ada's wrist. "Maybe we should stay a while. Make sure you're telling the truth." Luke started to rise, but Ada pressed him back, thinking fast. "Please," she begged. "Take whatever supplies you need. There's whiskey in the cabinet, some food. Just leave us be. I'll tell no one you were here." The man's grip tightened, and she saw his intent clear in his eyes. These men had been on the trail for days, looking for violence, finding a woman nearly alone. Boss didn't say nothing about having a little fun. The click of a hammer cocking froze everyone. Luke had managed to sit up. The spare revolver from under Ada's pillow aimed steady despite his pallor. "Let her go." His voice was quiet, deadly. "Now." "You're awful spry for a sick man," the leader observed, but he released Ada's wrist. "Fever broke this morning," Luke said. "Still weak as a kitten, but I can put 6 bullets where they need to go before you clear leather. Want to test it?" The mathematics of violence calculated quickly in the small space. 3 guns against 1, but Luke had the drop, and the cabin's confines meant the first shots would be decisive. "We're looking for Luke McKenna," the leader said finally. "Shot 3 days back. You seen him?" "Haven't seen anyone but my wife in a week," Luke replied. "Now get out of our home." Long seconds ticked by. Then the leader laughed, an ugly sound. "Come on, boys. Nothing here but lovesick fools." They filed out slowly, the leader turning at the door. "Funny thing, though, McKenna's horse was a paint, 4 white socks, just like that one in your lean-to." Luke never wavered. "Lots of paints in Montana. Friend, move on." The man's smile was all teeth. "We'll be around, case your memory improves." They mounted up and rode away, but Ada didn't relax until the hoofbeats faded completely. Then her knees gave out, and she sank onto the bed beside Luke, shaking. "You all right?" he asked urgently. "Did he hurt you?" "I'm fine." She rubbed her wrist, knowing there'd be bruises tomorrow. "That was too close." "You think fast." Admiration colored his voice. "The marriage story, the fever brilliant." "Desperate," she corrected. "And they didn't really believe it. They'll be back." Luke nodded grimly, lowering the gun at last. His hand trembled with the effort everything had cost him. "We need to move, soon as we can travel. Your wound will have to hold." He caught her hand, careful of her bruised wrist. "I won't let them hurt you. Ada should never have put you in danger." "I put myself in danger the moment I opened my door," she said firmly. "No regrets." His thumb brushed across her knuckles, the touch sending unexpected warmth through her. "You called me darling." Heat flooded her cheeks. "I was playing a role." "I know." His eyes held hers, still liked hearing it. The moment stretched between them, fragile and dangerous. Ada pulled her hand free, standing abruptly. "We should plan, if we're leaving tomorrow." "Ada," her name was soft on his lips. "What you did pretending we were married, risking your reputation." "My reputation was already ruined," she said lightly, but he shook his head. "Not here it wasn't, but after those men talk in town, people will think, they'll assume, that I'm a married woman." She managed a smile. "There are worse fates." "That's not," he struggled for words. "I won't let you suffer for helping me. When we get to the ranch, I'll make it clear." "You'll make nothing clear," Ada interrupted. "Those men work for Hale. If they think you're dead, that's an advantage. Let them spread whatever story they want about the teacher and her sick husband. When you're healed, when your family is safe, then we'll worry about setting records straight." Luke studied her with those penetrating green eyes. "You're remarkable. You know that." "I'm practical," she corrected. But his words warmed her anyway. "Now lie down before you fall down. We'll need all your strength tomorrow." He obeyed, but caught her hand once more as she tucked the blankets around him. "Ada, when this is over, when Hale's dealt with and things are settled, I'd like to court you proper, if you'd allow it." Her heart stuttered. "Luke, you're grateful. That's all. When you're well." "When I'm well, I'll still remember the woman who saved my life, who stood between me and 3 armed men, who gave up her last scrap of food to help a stranger." That's not gratitude talking. Ada, that's a man recognizing something rare when he sees it. She couldn't speak past the tightness in her throat. No one had ever looked at her the way Luke McKenna was looking at her now, like she was something precious, worth fighting for. "Rest," she whispered finally. "We'll see what tomorrow brings." But as she settled into her chair for another night's vigil, she let herself imagine, just for a moment, a future where she wasn't alone, where strong hands and green eyes and a voice that called her remarkable might build something lasting in this hard, beautiful land. Outside, snow began to fall again, covering the tracks of their unwelcome visitors. Inside, the fire crackled softly, and 2 people who'd been strangers 3 days ago sat quiet in the darkness, each thinking of possibilities neither had expected to find. Dawn came gray and bitter cold. Ada had spent the pre-dawn hours fashioning a travois from pine branches and rope, her hands raw from working in the freezing air. The contraption looked flimsy, but it would have to do. Luke watched from the doorway, his jaw tight with wounded pride. "I can ride," he insisted for the 3rd time. "You can barely stand." Ada tested the travois's strength, adjusting the knots. "Save your pride for when it won't kill you." He grimaced, but knew she was right. The effort of facing down Hale's men had cost him dearly. Fresh blood seeped through his bandages, and his face carried the waxy pallor of pain pushed too far. "Humiliating as it is," he finally conceded. "Better alive and embarrassed than dead and dignified." They worked together to secure what supplies they could carry. Ada packed her few medical supplies, the remaining food, and extra blankets. Everything else, her books, her mother's china teacup, the small comforts that had made the cabin feel like home would have to stay. "I'm sorry," Luke said quietly, watching her wrap the teacup in cloth before setting it back on the shelf. "About all you're leaving behind. Things can be replaced." She kept her voice steady. Though the loss stung, this cabin had been her refuge, her new beginning. Now it was just another place she had to flee. Getting Luke onto the travois proved challenging. He tried to help but nearly passed out from the pain. Finally, Ada managed to secure him, wrapping him in every blanket they had. "Feel like a damned papoose," he muttered, but his eyes were grateful. Ada took Storm's reins, speaking softly to the paint horse. "I know you're tired, boy, but we need you to be strong a little longer." The horse seemed to understand, standing steady as she adjusted the travois's harness. Then they set out into the white wilderness. The path down the mountain was treacherous. Snow had drifted deep in places, hiding rocks and holes that could snap a horse's leg or send them tumbling into ravines. Ada led on foot, testing each step, her skirts hiked up and tied to keep them from tangling. The cold bit through her boots, numbing her feet within minutes. Behind her, Luke drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally mumbling directions. "Bear left at the split pine," he'd say, or "watch the drop past the granite face." Even half delirious, he knew this country better than she did. By midday, they'd covered maybe 3 miles. Ada's legs shook with exhaustion, and she'd fallen twice. The second time sliding 20 feet down an icy slope before catching herself on a stunted juniper. Luke had tried to get up to help, nearly tipping the travois. "Stay down," she'd ordered, climbing back up with bleeding palms. "I'm fine." "You're not fine." His voice was rough with fever and frustration. "Ada, we need to rest." "We need to keep moving. Those men won't travel in this weather any more than we will." He was right, and she knew it. "Look for shelter, please." She found it an hour later, an old miner's shack, half collapsed but with 3 walls and part of a roof still standing. She managed to drag Luke inside, then went back for Storm, coaxing the exhausted horse under what remained of the roof structure. The shack offered little warmth, but it blocked the wind. Ada got a small fire going with wood scavenged from the broken furniture, then turned to check Luke's wounds. What she found made her stomach drop. The wound had torn open, probably during the confrontation the night before. Fresh stitches had pulled free. An infection was setting in red streaks spreading from the wound site. "How bad?" Luke asked, reading her expression. "I need to clean it and stitch it again." She kept her voice calm despite the fear clawing at her chest. "It'll hurt." "Do it!" She worked quickly, using the last of the whiskey to clean the wound. Luke bit down on a piece of leather, his body rigid with pain. When she pulled the needle through for the first stitch, he made a sound that tore at her heart. But he didn't move. "Almost done," she whispered, though she was only halfway through. "You're doing so well." When she finished, he was barely conscious, skin clammy with shock. She covered him with every blanket, built up the fire, and sat beside him, pulling his head into her lap. His hair was damp with sweat despite the cold. "Don't you dare die on me, Luke McKenna," she said fiercely. "Not after everything." His eyes fluttered open, focusing on her face. "Bossy," he mumbled, "like that about you. Rest. Save your strength for healing." "Ada." His hand found hers, grip weak but determined. "If I don't make it, you will make it." "Listen." The urgency in his voice stopped her protests. "Water rights document, hidden in the ranch house, behind my father's portrait in the study. Original Mexican grant, territorial recognition, everything. Without it, family has no legal claim. Luke, promise me, if something happens, you'll tell my mother. Tell her where it is. Tell her." He struggled for breath. "Tell her I tried." "You'll tell her yourself." Tears burned her eyes. "Because you're going to survive this. I won't accept anything else." He smiled weakly. "There's that backbone again." His eyes drifted closed. "Never met anyone like you, Ada Whitfield." She held him as the afternoon wore on, monitoring his breathing, checking his pulse. The fever climbed again as darkness fell. She gave him willow bark tea when he could swallow, melted snow for water, kept the fire burning with broken chair legs and old timber. In his delirium, he talked about water, always water, the lifeblood of ranch country, the thing men killed and died for. He described channels cut through rock by his father's hands, wells dug in drought years, the sweet taste of spring runoff. She listened and learned, understanding more with each rambling story about why water rights mattered enough to spill blood over. 3 springs, he muttered. They feed into Sawyer Creek. Hale's dam cuts the flow, starves everyone downstream. Can't let him. The association, we planned. Shh, Ada soothed, but she filed every word away. If they survived this, she'd need to understand what they were fighting for. Near midnight, something made her look up. Through gaps in the broken wall, she saw lights moving on the slope above, torches, multiple riders, searching. Her blood froze. Storm, exhausted, hadn't made any sound to alert her. The riders were maybe a quarter-mile away, moving systematically down the mountain. "Luke," she shook him gently. "Luke, wake up. They're coming." His eyes opened, struggled to focus. She helped him sit up, pressed his revolver into his hand. "How many?" "4, maybe 5, with torches." He swore softly. "Can't run, can't fight." He looked around the ruined shack, then at her. "The root cellar." "What?" "Old shacks like this always had root cellars. Look for a trapdoor." She searched frantically, brushing away years of debris. Their wooden planks in the floor, nearly rotted through. She pried them up, revealing a dark hole barely big enough for 2 people. "You first," Luke said. "Together or not at all." They managed to lower themselves into the cramped space, Ada pulling the planks back over their heads just as hoofbeats approached. The cellar was dirt-walled, musty, so tight they were pressed together with no room to move. Something skittered across Ada's hand spider or worse, but she didn't make a sound. Above, boots stomped across the floor. "Someone's been here," a voice said. "Fire's still warm." "Check outside. They can't have gone far." The searchers spent what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes examining the shack. Once, a boot stepped directly on the planks above their heads, and dirt sifted down into Ada's hair. Luke's arm tightened around her. Finally, miraculously, the sounds faded. "Nothing here but ghosts," someone declared. "If McKenna came this way, he's buried in a drift by now." They waited another hour before emerging, cramped and frozen. The fire had died, and Luke's tremors were from cold now as much as fever. "We can't stay," Ada said, though moving seemed impossible. "They might come back. Dawn," Luke bargained. "We move at dawn. Few hours won't matter if we freeze trying to travel in the dark." She rebuilt the fire smaller, smokeless, and they huddled together for warmth. Propriety seemed absurd when survival was in question. Luke pulled her against his chest, wrapping them both in the blankets. "Your reputation," he murmured, half joking, "is keeping us alive." She could feel his heartbeat, too fast but steady. "Though if anyone asks, you were a perfect gentleman." "Always am." His voice was drowsy. "Except when I'm not." Despite everything, the danger, the cold, the uncertainty ahead, Ada felt safer than she had in months. Luke's arms around her were protective, not possessive, even half dead. He was trying to shield her from the cold with his body. "Tell me about the double bar M," she said softly. "What's it like?" He was quiet so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, "Most beautiful land you ever saw. Valley stretches green in spring, gold in summer. Mountains rise up like God's own fence posts. Main house sits on a rise, can see for miles. My mother keeps a garden, roses and vegetables fighting for space. Emily plays piano in the evenings, and the hands gather on the porch to listen." "Sounds like paradise." "It is, was, will be again. Once we deal with hail." His arms tightened. "You'll see. When we get there, you'll see why it's worth fighting for." The certainty in his voice that they would get there, that she would be welcomed, made her throat tight. "Luke." "What you said before, about courting." She felt him tense slightly. "You barely know me." "Know enough." His breath stirred her hair. "Know you're brave and smart and kind. Know you've got medical skills and teaching experience, both needed in ranch country. Know you make me want to be better than I am." "You're delirious." "Probably. Doesn't make it less true." He shifted carefully, looking down at her in the firelight. "I'm not saying we get married tomorrow. Ada, I'm saying I'd like the chance to earn your affection. Do things proper. Sunday dinners, church socials, long rides when the wildflowers bloom. Whatever it takes to prove I'm worth your time." She thought of Theodore Hartwell, his smooth words hiding corrupt intentions. Luke McKenna, even burning with fever, spoke plain and true. The contrast was stark. "All right," she whispered. "All right. When this is over, when you're healed and your family is safe, you can come calling." She managed a small smile. "Though I should warn you, I have very high standards." "Wouldn't expect otherwise." He was smiling too. She could hear it in his voice. "Fair warning, though I've been told I'm mighty persistent." "Fair warning back, I've been told I'm mighty stubborn." "Good match, then." They fell quiet, listening to the wind outside, somewhere in the darkness. Dangerous men hunted them. Tomorrow would bring more hardship. more uncertainty. But for now, in this moment, they had warmth and hope and possibility. Ada felt Luke's breathing deepen as he finally slept. She should sleep too, would need her strength come dawn, but she stayed awake a while longer, memorizing the feeling of safety in the middle of danger, of finding something precious in the last place she'd expected. The fire burned low. She fed it the last chair leg, knowing they'd need to leave before it died completely. Outside, snow began to fall again, covering their tracks, buying them time. "We're going to make it," she whispered to the sleeping man in her arms. "Both of us? Together?" The wind howled agreement or mockery, she couldn't tell which. But Ada Whitfield had survived Boston's betrayal and Montana's brutality. She'd survive this too, and see Luke McKenna safely home. What happened after that? Well, that would be a different kind of adventure entirely. The Double Bar M Ranch appeared through the morning haze like a promise kept. Ada's legs trembled with exhaustion as she led Storm down the final slope, but the sight of the sprawling valley below gave her strength. Luke had undersold it. The land rolled out in waves of white-dusted sage and grass, bisected by the dark ribbon of Sawyer Creek. The main house sat proud on its rise, smoke curling from multiple chimneys. "We made it," she breathed. Behind her on the travois, Luke stirred. He'd been unconscious for the last 2 hours, and she'd feared the worst with every silent mile. Now his eyes opened, focusing on the familiar landscape. "Home," he whispered. They'd barely cleared the ranch gate when riders appeared, moving fast from the barn. Ada tensed, but Luke managed to raise a weak hand. "It's all right. That's Caleb, our foreman." The lead rider, a grizzled man in his 50s, pulled up sharp. His weathered face went from suspicious to shocked in an instant. "Sweet Mary and Joseph, Luke." In the flesh, mostly. Luke's attempt at humor fell flat as Caleb took in the travois, the bandages, Ada's exhausted state. "Get Martha," Caleb barked to one of the other riders. "Tell Mrs. McKenna her boy's home. Move." They surrounded Ada and Luke like a protective guard, leading them toward the house. Ada saw curtains twitch, faces appear at windows. Then the front door burst open and a woman flew down the steps, tall, steel-haired, with Luke's green eyes blazing in a face carved by sun and sorrow. "My boy," Maureen McKenna said, reaching for her son. Her hands shook as she touched his face, assuring herself he was real. Then those sharp eyes turned to Ada. "You brought him home?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then your family now. Caleb, help me get him inside. Gently." The next hour passed in a blur. They established Luke in a ground-floor bedroom, and Ada found herself working alongside Maureen to treat his wounds. The older woman's hands were as steady as any nurse's, her questions sharp and practical. Infections set in. Ada reported quietly, "I've done what I could, but he needs more than I had to give. You kept him alive. That's what matters." Maureen's voice carried the iron of a woman who'd buried a husband and refused to bury a son. "Emily's gone for Dr. Morrison. He'll be here by nightfall." A younger version of Maureen appeared in the doorway. Emily, 16 and fierce, with red-brown hair and worried eyes. "Mama, is he—" "He'll live," Maureen said firmly. "Thanks to Miss Whitfield, Ada Whitfield." "The new teacher. I heard you'd come to the valley." Maureen studied her with those penetrating eyes. "Seems we owe you more than we can repay." "No debt," Ada said quickly. "I did what anyone would." "No." Maureen's hand covered hers. "You did what you could. There's a difference. Emily, draw Miss Whitfield a bath. Find her some clean clothes. She's dead on her feet." Ada wanted to protest, but exhaustion won. She followed Emily down a hallway lined with photographs Luke at various ages, a stern-faced man who must have been his father, family gatherings full of smiling faces. "That's Papa," Emily said, noticing her interest. "Died 5 years back. Broke horse accident." She opened a door to reveal a bedroom with a copper tub. "I'll heat water. You rest." But Ada couldn't rest, even after bathing, even wearing one of Emily's dresses that was only slightly too short. She found herself back in Luke's room. Maureen sat beside the bed, holding her son's hand. "Can't stay away either," the older woman observed. "Sit. Tell me how you found him." Ada told the story simply: the storm, the wound, the fever. She left out Hale's men's visit, the intimate moments in the root cellar. Some things weren't hers to share. "You've medical training," Maureen noted. "Some. I helped the town doctor back in Boston when illness swept through the school." "Boston." Maureen's tone was neutral. "Long way from home." "I needed a new start." Ada met her gaze steadily. "Montana seemed like the place for it." "It can be, for those strong enough." Maureen was quiet for a moment. "Luke's been talking about you, even before this. Said the new teacher was different, smart, kind to the Mexican families when others weren't." Heat touched Ada's cheeks. "I believe in education for all children." "So did my husband. We've books in Spanish as well as English in the study. You're welcome to them for your school." Maureen rose. "I need to speak with Caleb about increasing patrols. Hale won't wait long once he hears Luke survived. Will you sit with him?" "Of course." Alone with Luke, Ada let herself really look at the room. It was simply furnished but comfortable, a shelf of books, a guitar in the corner, spurs hanging from a peg. The window overlooked the creek, and she could see why he'd fought so hard to get home. Admiring the view, his voice made her jump. "You're awake?" "Have been for a bit. Didn't want to interrupt you and Ma getting acquainted." He studied her face. "She likes you." "How can you tell?" "She didn't interrogate you about your intentions. That's practically a welcome to the family." His smile faded. "Ada, what you did is done. Focus on getting better." "I mean it. You saved my life, risked your reputation, left your home." "My cabin, not my home." She adjusted his blanket unnecessarily. "Home is more than walls and a roof." "What is it then?" She thought about it. "People who accept you, work that matters, a place to belong." "Could be that's here, if you wanted." Before she could respond, Caleb appeared in the doorway. "Sorry to interrupt. Luke, we got problems." Luke struggled to sit up. "Hale!" "Judge sent notice. Since you've been missing, he's filed an injunction on the water rights. Says without a male heir present, the claim reverts to public domain, meaning he can bid on it." "That bastard. Pardon. Miss Ada." "When's the hearing?" Luke asked. 3 days. "I'll be there." "Luke, you can't even stand," Ada began. "Then I'll crawl." His jaws set in that stubborn line she was beginning to know well. "He's not taking our water." Maureen returned, having heard the news. "We'll handle it," she told her son. "You focus on healing." "Ma, the ranch has been in this family 30 years. It's not going anywhere." She turned to Caleb. "Gather the hands. We need to talk strategy. And send word to the other ranchers. If Hale thinks he can use legal trickery while my son recovers from his bullets, he's got another think coming." Over the next 2 days, Ada watched the double bar M transform into a center of resistance. Ranchers arrived at all hours, dusty men with worried faces and determined eyes. They gathered in the large parlor, and Ada found herself taking notes as they discussed water tables, grazing rights, and legal precedents. "You don't have to do this," Luke said when she brought him the notes to review. "Yes, I do." She arranged the papers so he could read without straining. "I told you once I was in. He caught her hand. "Ada, besides," she continued, pulling free gently. "I have skills you need. I can organize documents, write letters, research law. Let me help." That's how she found herself in the study at midnight, surrounded by decades of papers. Maureen worked beside her, sorting through land grants and contracts. "My husband saved everything," Maureen explained. "Said paper was stronger than bullets in the long run." He was right. Ada held up a document. "This survey from 1868 shows the natural watercourse before any dams. And this testimony from the original Mexican landowner confirms the water rights were transferred with the land sale. Will it be enough? Combined with the original grant Luke mentioned, it should be..." Ada made another note. "We need affidavits from the longest residing ranchers, confirming the historical water usage. And if we can prove Hale's Dam violates territorial law..." "You sound like a lawyer." "I had to learn some law in Boston. When they accused me..." She stopped, but Maureen's expression encouraged her to continue. "When false accusations were made, I researched. Not that it helped against wealthy men's lies." "This isn't Boston," Maureen said firmly. "Here, we protect our own." The morning of the hearing dawned clear and cold. Luke insisted on attending despite everyone's protests. They made a strange procession, Luke propped in the wagon bed, Maureen beside him, Emily driving. Ada rode alongside on a borrowed mare, wearing her best dress and carrying a leather case full of documents. Half the valley had turned out. The small courthouse overflowed. Ranchers and their families packed shoulder to shoulder. Baron Hale sat at the front, expensive suit and oiled hair making him look like what he was, a vulture among eagles. "Didn't expect to see you. McKenna," Hale said as they helped Luke to a chair. "Heard you'd met with an accident." "Funny how accidents happen around you." Luke replied evenly. Judge Watson, a thin man with nervous eyes, called for order. It was clear from his demeanor that Hale owned him, but they had to try. The hearing began badly. Hale's lawyer, brought in from Denver, argued smoothly that the McKenna claim was invalid without proper male succession present. He produced documents, twisted laws, made absence seem like abandonment. Then Ada stood. "Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence on behalf of the McKenna family." The judge frowned. "And you are..." "Ada Whitfield, teacher and..." She glanced at Luke, making a decision. "Friend to the family. Women can't represent legal interests." I'm presenting documents for your review." "Surely the court isn't afraid of paper." Snickers ran through the crowd. The judge flushed but nodded curtly. Ada laid out their case piece by piece: the original grant, the Mexican transfer, the territorial recognition, affidavits from 15 families confirming decades of water usage, survey maps showing Hale's Dam violated natural waterways. "Furthermore," she said, her voice carrying clear and strong, "Baron Hale's claim rests on the absence of a male heir, but the original grant recognized by both Mexican and American law specifies heirs and descendants without gender limitation. Mrs. Maureen McKenna and Miss Emily McKenna have equal claim to succession." The courtroom erupted. Hale shot to his feet. "That's absurd! Women can't hold water rights!" "According to what law?" Ada challenged. "Show me the statute. Show me where territorial law denies women property rights clearly granted in prior agreements." Hale's lawyer scrambled through papers, but Ada knew he'd find nothing. She'd checked. Luke watched her with something like awe. This wasn't the quiet woman who'd nursed him through fever. This was a warrior in petticoats, wielding words like weapons. "The court will recess," Judge Watson said weakly. "I need to review." "Review what?" Maureen stood now, every inch the matriarch. "The law's clear. My husband left this ranch to his family. I've run it 5 years since his death. My son was shot by parties unknown while defending our legal rights. And now you want to hand our water to the man who benefits most from these accidents." The crowd stirred. Angry murmurs building. These were people who'd suffered under Hale's schemes, who'd lost cattle to his dam, who'd been offered pennies on the dollar for land made worthless without water. "Order!" Watson banged his gavel. "I'll render decision tomorrow." "You'll render it now." A new voice from the back. Federal Marshal Briggs walked down the aisle, badge glinting. Had a telegram from the territorial governor. Seems he's interested in reports of water rights violations. Land fraud, attempted murder. He looked directly at Hale. Also got sworn testimony from one of your hired guns. William Brennan says you ordered the attack on Luke McKenna, among other things. The courtroom exploded. Hale went white, then red. That's a lie you can't prove. Don't need to prove it here, Briggs said mildly. That's for a real court to decide. Watson, you want to add judicial corruption to the charges, or you want to do your job? The judge looked between Hale and the marshal, calculating rapidly. Self-preservation won. The court finds in favor of the McKenna family. All water rights confirmed as previously established. Mr. Hale's dam is ordered removed within 30 days. Chaos. Cheers from the ranchers. Curses from Hale's contingent. Ada felt her knees go weak with relief. Luke caught her hand, squeezing tight. You did it, he said. We did it. She looked around at the celebrating families. All of us. Marshal Briggs approached. Miss Whitfield might need you to write out those legal arguments. Territorial prosecutor will want to see them. Of course. Hale pushed past them, pausing to hiss at Luke. This isn't over. Yes, Luke said quietly. It is. You're done in this valley. Hale, take what the law leaves you and get out. They helped Luke back to the wagon, surrounded by well-wishers. Ada felt the change in how people looked at her, no longer the mysterious Eastern teacher, but one of them, someone who'd stood up when it mattered. There's something else, Luke said as they prepared to leave. He raised his voice so others could hear. We're calling a meeting, all the ranchers. Time to make that water association real. Share resources, patrol together, make sure nothing like this happens again. Agreement rippled through the crowd. From the courthouse steps, Ada watched neighbors who'd been isolated by fear and distance start talking, planning, hoping. You started something, Maureen said quietly beside her. Luke started it. I just helped finish it. No. The older woman's arm went around her shoulders. You showed us we could fight with more than guns. That's going to matter long after Hale's gone. The ride home was quiet, everyone exhausted by emotion. But as they crested the rise overlooking the double bar M, Luke spoke. Stay. Ada looked at him. What? Stay. Not just tonight. The cabin's gone. You need somewhere to live. We've got room. You could teach from here, help with the association. His green eyes held hers. Unless you're planning to move on. She thought about it. The cabin had been a hiding place, not a home. This ranch, these people, this felt like something to build on. All right, she said, until I find another place. Luke smiled. And she knew he heard what she didn't say, that she was in no hurry to find that other place, that maybe she'd already found where she belonged. The sun was setting as they reached the ranch, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Hale wouldn't give up easily. The association would need organizing. Wounds, both physical and legal, would need tending. But tonight, they were victorious. Tonight, a family was whole and water would flow free come spring. And a woman who'd fled Boston in shame had found something worth fighting for in the harsh beauty of Montana. As Caleb helped Luke inside, he looked back at Ada. Thank you, he said simply. Partners, she replied. Remember. His smile was answer enough. The morning sun painted Sawyer Creek silver as Ada stood on its banks, sketching the water's path in a worn notebook. 3 weeks had passed since the hearing, and she'd made it her mission to understand every twist and turn of the waterway that meant life or death to the valley. The main spring starts here, Caleb explained, pointing upstream. 2 smaller feeders join it about a mile up. In good years, there's plenty for everyone. In drought, he shook his head. Ada noted the eroded banks, the signs of irregular flow. Hale's dam disrupted more than just volume. It changed the entire pattern. You've got a good eye. Caleb studied her with approval. Most folks just see water. You see the system. That evening, she stood before a crowded room in the McKenna barn. Ranchers filled every bench and hay bale, their wives holding babies, older children sitting cross-legged on the floor. These gatherings had become regular since the hearing, but tonight was different. Tonight, Ada had a proposal. "Gentlemen," she began, then caught herself. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've talked about defending our water. Now we need to think about sharing it." A murmur ran through the crowd. Old Sam Morrison spat tobacco juice into a tin can. "Sharing's all well and good when there's enough to share." "That's exactly why we need a system," Ada said calmly. She'd expected resistance. "Look at this." She unrolled a large map she'd spent days preparing. "I've marked every ranch, every water access point, every irrigation ditch. See the overlap, the waste." She pointed to specific areas. The Henderson place waters their east pasture the same days the Carlson Ranch floods their west field. Result oversaturation and runoff. Meanwhile, the Pruitt family's South 40 goes dry. "You saying we've been doing it wrong all these years?" Jack Henderson's voice carried a challenge. "I'm saying we've been doing it alone." Ada met his gaze steadily. "Hale taught us one thing. United we're stronger than divided. Why not apply that to water management?" Luke watched from his chair near the wall. He was stronger now, able to walk short distances. But Maureen had forbidden him from standing through long meetings. His eyes never left Ada as she explained her rotation proposal. "Each ranch gets designated watering days based on acreage and stock. We dig holding ponds for runoff that water doesn't have to be wasted. Come drought, we'll have reserves. Come flood, we'll have control." "Who decides the schedule?" Maria Santos asked from the back. The Mexican families often stayed quiet at these meetings, but Ada had made a point of drawing them in. "We do, together. Every member of the Water Association gets a vote." Ada looked around the room. "Equal say, equal responsibility." "Women, too?" Emma Pruitt asked, surprise coloring her voice. "Everyone who works the land should have say in how it's watered," Ada replied firmly. The room erupted in discussion. Some men scoffed at the idea of women voting on ranch matters. Others worried about the work involved in digging retention ponds. But underneath the protests, Ada heard something else hope. "It could work," Tom Carlson said slowly. "My PA tried something similar with the Morrison place back in '72. Worked fine till they fell out over fence lines. That's why we put it in writing." Ada said, "Legal documentation, recorded with the county. No handshake deals that die with the men who made them." "You'd write it up?" Morrison asked. "Make it all legal-like." "If you'll have me." The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was solid. The Dusty Creek Water Association was officially born, with a charter that made old-timers shake their heads and young ranchers grin. Women could vote. Books would be kept. Disputes would be settled by elected committee, not gunfire. After the meeting, Ada found herself surrounded by ranch wives asking questions about the school. Word had spread about her teaching, and several families wanted to send their children despite the distance. "Bring them," Ada said. "I'll hold classes 3 days a week in the McKenna barn until we can build a proper schoolhouse." "Even the Mexican children?" Maria Santos asked carefully. "Especially them. Education doesn't care what language you speak at home." As the crowd dispersed, Luke made his way to her side. "You've got them thinking different," he said. "That's no small feat. Change is hard, but harder is watching children go without water or learning." She began rolling up her map. "Your mother offered to help with the school. Emily, too." "Course they did. Ma's been saying for years we need better education out here." He paused, seeming to gather courage. "Ada, there's something I've been meaning to ask." But before he could continue, hoofbeats thundered into the yard. A rider pulled up hard. his horse lathered with sweat. "Fire!" he shouted. "The Morrison grain barn and riders heading for the Pruitt place." The peaceful evening shattered. Men ran for horses and weapons while women gathered children. Luke grabbed his gun belt, but Ada caught his arm. "You're not healed enough. My valley, my fight." His face was stone. "But you're right. I can't ride hard, so I need you to do something for me." "Anything. Take Storm. Ride to town. Telegraph the marshal, tell him Hale's making his move. Then get somewhere safe." Luke. "Please, Ada, I can't protect you and fight them both." She wanted to argue, but saw the wisdom. "I'll go, but you be careful." "Always am." He caught her hand briefly. "Whatever happens tonight, I want you to know you've made a difference here. Made me see things different, too." There was no time for more. Ada ran for the barn, while Luke joined the stream of armed men organizing in the yard. Maureen appeared with medical supplies. "You'll need help at the telegraph office." The older woman said, "Take Emily. She knows the operator." Within minutes, Ada and Emily were racing toward town on the fastest horses the ranch owned. Behind them, the sky glowed orange where the Morrison barn burned. Ada's heart hammered as she remembered another fire, another man who'd stood against Hale. But Tom Morrison had been alone. Tonight, he had allies. Town was in uproar when they arrived. News of the attacks had spread, and people milled in the streets. Ada pushed through to the telegraph office. Emily close behind. "Need to send an urgent message." Ada told the operator. "Federal Marshal Briggs, Denver." Her fingers shook as she wrote. "Baron Hale attacking ranchers. Arson confirmed Morrison property. Armed riders moving on others. Request immediate intervention. Lives at stake." "Should we wait for a reply?" Emily asked. "No time. We need—" Ada stopped. Through the window, she saw riders entering town. Hale's men, looking for any ranchers who might be gathering resistance. "Emily, is there a back door?" They slipped out moments before the riders reached the telegraph office. Ada pulled Emily into the shadows between buildings. Heart pounding, the men were rough-looking, trail-dirty, and armed for war. "Check the saloon," one ordered. "Boss wants every able-bodied man at the ranch held down." They were trying to prevent reinforcements from reaching the attacked ranches. Smart and ruthless Hale's trademark. "The church," Emily whispered. "Father Miguel will hide us." They made it to the small Catholic church without being seen. Father Miguel, an elderly priest who served the Mexican families, took them in without question. "The women are gathering here," he said, "to pray and prepare bandages. We fear they will be needed." The next hours passed in tense waiting. Women arrived with the news the Morrison barn was lost, but the family safe. The Pruitts had been warned in time and poured up in their house. Gunfire had been heard from multiple directions. Near midnight, a commotion outside brought everyone to the windows. Riders were returning, but not in the orderly fashion of victors. They straggled in, some wounded, all exhausted. Ada searched desperately for familiar faces. There Caleb, supporting a younger hand, Tom Carlson, his arm in a makeshift sling, and finally, Luke, still in the saddle but slumped forward, his shirt dark with what could only be blood. Ada ran into the street, Emily beside her. They reached Luke as he half fell from Storm's back. "Not mine," he said quickly, seeing Ada's fear. "Well, not all mine, just a graze." But his legs buckled, and she saw the bullet furrow across his ribs, not deep, but bleeding freely. The barely healed shoulder wound had torn open again, too. "Stubborn man," she muttered, helping him toward the church. "I told you not to." "Had to." His arm went around her shoulders. Heavy, but welcome. "We held them off. Hale's retreating to his ranch. But Ada, there's more. One of his men, before he died, he said Hale's got legal papers. A judge in Helena, bought and paid for. Going to get the whole valley declared public domain so he can claim it all. Then we'll fight that too." She eased him onto a church pew. "Rest now. Let me work." She cleaned and bound his wounds with practiced efficiency, aware of his eyes on her face. Around them, other women tended other men. The church had become a battlefield hospital. "We need to be ready." Luke said, "This isn't over. He'll regroup. Come back harder." "I know." Ada tied off the last bandage. "But so will we. The association." "The association is more than water rights now," Maureen said, appearing beside them. She looked older tonight, worn by fear and fighting, but unbroken. "It's mutual defense, community. What you started." "Ada." "I didn't start anything. I just showed us we were stronger together than apart." Luke caught her hand. "That speech you gave tonight, about sharing water, folks listened because you earned their respect. At the hearing, in the barn, every time you stood up for what's right." "Pretty words won't stop bullets," Ada said, but her voice was thick with emotion. "No, but they'll rally the people who will." Emily joined them, bringing water. "Half the town's talking about joining the association now, even folks who don't ranch." Hale threatened everyone tonight. Father Miguel approached. "The church offers sanctuary to any who need it. And Miss Whitfield, if you would accept, we have need of a teacher for our children too. Many families cannot travel to your barn school." "I'd be honored, Father." As dawn broke, the full cost of the night became clear. 2 men dead, 6 wounded, thousands of dollars in property destroyed. But Hale had lost more 8 of his hired guns killed or captured. His legal claim to water rights in shambles. His political protection wavering as telegrams flew between Dusty Creek and the territorial capital. "He'll make one more play," Luke said as they prepared to return to the ranch. He moved stiffly but insisted on riding. Men like Hale don't quit. They double down. "Then we'll be ready." Ada swung up onto her borrowed mare with growing confidence. These weeks at the ranch had taught her to ride properly. "The Water Association meets tomorrow. If folks aren't too scared to come, they'll come." She looked back at the town, where people were already clearing debris and starting to rebuild. "They've seen what standing alone costs. They'll come." The ride home was quiet, each lost in thought. As they crested the rise overlooking the double bar M, Luke spoke. "What I was trying to say earlier, before the alarm." "Luke." Ada's voice was gentle but firm. "Not now. Not with blood on your shirt and war on our doorstep. Ask me when this is over. When you're healed and Hale's gone and we can think clearly." He studied her face. "You think feelings will change when the danger's past?" "I think feelings born in crisis need testing in peace." She met his gaze. "If what's between us is real, it'll keep, if it's just shared danger and proximity." She shrugged. "You're right." He smiled ruefully. "Doesn't mean I like waiting. Good things are worth waiting for, Mr. McKenna." "Yes, Miss Whitfield, they are." As they rode into the ranch yard, Ada saw the preparation already underway. Men cleaning weapons, women organizing supplies, everyone moving with purpose. The Water Association had become something more, a community defense force, a political body, a hope for the future. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Hale would strike again. The law would be tested. Lives would hang in the balance. But tonight, they were together. Tonight, they were strong. Ada dismounted and immediately began organizing medical supplies for the battles to come. Around her, the double bar M hummed with activity. This was her place now. These her people. Whatever came next, she would face it with them. The war for Dusty Creek's water and future was far from over. But for the first time since fleeing Boston, Ada Whitfield knew exactly where she stood and why. That, more than anything, made her dangerous to men like Baron Hale. It also, she admitted privately, made her exactly the kind of woman Luke McKenna needed. Whether he was exactly the kind of man she needed, well, that remained to be seen. But she was beginning to suspect he was. Dawn mist clung to Sawyer Creek as riders converged from every corner of the valley. 2 weeks had passed since the night raids, and intelligence suggested Hale was planning something bigger. Scouts reported supply wagons heading to his ranch, hired guns from as far as Texas arriving daily. Ada stood with Luke on the rise overlooking the strategic positions. The association had evolved from a water-sharing agreement into a coordinated defense force. Women manned supply lines, while men took shifts patrolling borders. Even children had roles carrying messages, watching for strangers. "They'll come at dawn," Luke said, studying the terrain. "Hit the Morrison place first to divide our forces, then swing toward the creek junction. If they take that, they control water to 5 ranches." "The barrels are in position?" Ada asked. "Along the ridge, just like you suggested." He glanced at her with admiration. "Whoever taught you tactics in that Boston school?" "Shakespeare," she said dryly. "Amazing what you learned from Henry V, plus common sense high ground and water-win wars." A rider approached at speed. Young William Pruitt, barely 16 but one of their best scouts. "Mr. McKenna column of riders, maybe 30, moving up Devil's Wash. And sir, they've got dynamite." Luke's face went grim. "They mean to blow the creek bed, redirect the flow to Hale's land." He turned to the assembled ranchers. "This is it, boys. They take our water today or we stop them for good." The men scattered to their positions. Ada moved toward the medical station they'd established in a grove of cottonwoods. But Luke caught her arm. "Ada, if this goes bad—" "It won't." She touched his face briefly. "We've planned for this. Trust your people." He pulled her close. "Just for a moment." "Trust you? You mean half these strategies are yours?" "Go," she said softly. "Lead them. I'll be here when it's done." As Luke rode to take command, Ada organized her makeshift hospital. Maureen worked beside her, along with Maria Santos and several other women. They had bandages, surgical tools, and grim determination. The first shots echoed across the valley just after sunrise. Ada forced herself to focus on preparations, not on which gun might be Luke's, which cry might be his. Around her, women shared the same controlled fear. "First wounded coming in," Emily called from her lookout post. The battle raged for hours. Ada worked mechanically cleaning wounds, extracting bullets, stitching flesh. The injuries told the story. Hale's men had better weapons, but the ranchers had better positions and motivation. Near noon, the tide turned. Tom Carlson arrived, grinning despite a grazed shoulder. "We held Devil's Wash. They tried to circle but ran right into the Henderson boys. And Mrs. Morrison, you should have seen her with that shotgun." But the victory was incomplete. Riders reported Hale himself leading a smaller force toward the creek junction. Taking advantage of the defenders pulled to Devil's Wash. "It's a feint," Ada realized. The main attack was the distraction. She turned to Emily. "Can you ride?" "Of course. Find Luke. Tell him Hale's real target is the junction. We prepared for this Operation Watershed." Emily galloped off. Ada returned to her patients, but her mind was on the secondary plan they'd developed. If Hale reached the junction. An hour later, a tremendous explosion shook the ground. Ada's heart stopped until she remembered that was their dynamite. Not Hale's. The ranchers had mined a temporary dam upstream, ready to release a wall of water if needed. The flood would fill the creek bed, making it impossible to divert or dam for days. It would also sweep away anyone caught in its path. More wounded arrived. But now with the news of victory, Hale's force at the junction had been caught by the flood. Scattering in panic, the main attack at Devil's Wash crumbled as word spread that their leader had fled. As afternoon wore on, the tide of wounded slowed. Ada finally allowed herself to look for Luke among the returning defenders. When she spotted Storm, her knees nearly buckled with relief. Luke dismounted stiffly, favoring his left side. Blood stained his shirt, the same wounds torn open again, but he was whole, alive, victorious. "We did it," he said simply. Hale's running for his ranch with what many has left. The price? Ada asked, already knowing it would be high. 4 dead, 10 wounded. Too bad. But Ada, we took prisoners, including Hale's foreman. He's talking, trying to save his neck. Says Hale's got documents that prove he bribed judges, threatened witnesses, ordered murders. Evidence, Ada breathed. Real evidence. Enough to hang him, if we can get it. That evening, the association gathered in the McKenna barn. Exhausted faces bore the marks of battle, but also determination. They'd won the day, but Hale still held his fortified ranch. We could siege him, Jack Henderson suggested. Starve him out. Take too long, Caleb countered. He's got supplies. Might get reinforcements. What about the law? Maria Santos asked. If we have evidence. Marshal Briggs is 2 days away at best. Luke said. Hale could burn everything and run before. He won't run. A new voice from the barn door. Everyone turned to see a young man, well-dressed but travel-worn. Because he's got nowhere to go. Luke's hand went to his gun. Who are you? William Hale, the Baron's son. The young man raised empty hands. I'm here to help. The barn erupted. Men reached for weapons. Women pulled children back. But Ada noticed something the young man's eyes held shame, not threat. Wait, she said. Let him speak. William Hale stepped forward slowly. My father, what he's become. I've been back east at school. Just returned last week. I didn't want to know what he was doing here. He pulled papers from his coat. These are from his safe. Deeds, contracts, bribes, everything you need. Why? Luke demanded. Why betray your father? Because I saw what he did to the Morrison barn. Heard him laugh about families burned out of their homes. William's voice broke. My mother died believing he was a good man. I won't let him destroy her memory along with this valley. Ada studied the young man's face. There's more. What aren't you telling us? William met her gaze. He's planning to burn it all. The ranch, the evidence, everything. Then disappear. He's got passage booked on a ship from San Francisco. He'll leave at dawn. Then we go tonight. Luke said, but Ada was already thinking ahead. No, let him burn it. She smiled at the shocked faces. William, does your father know you have these documents? No, he thinks they're in the safe. Perfect. She turned to the assembly. Let Hale destroy what he thinks is evidence. Meanwhile, we have the real proof safe. When the marshal arrives, we'll have documents and a burned ranch that proves guilt. But he'll escape. Tom Morrison protested. Will he? Ada looked at William. Those ship passages, are they in your father's name? Understanding dawned on the young man's face. No, aliases, but I know which ones. Then we telegraph ahead, have authorities waiting in San Francisco. She looked around the room. We've won the water war. Now let's win the peace. The plan came together quickly. William, escorted by armed ranchers, would ride for the telegraph office. The documents would be secured at multiple locations, and Hale would be allowed to burn his own trap. As the meeting dispersed, Luke drew Ada aside. That was brilliant, letting him think he's won while we close the net. I learned something in Boston, she said quietly. Sometimes the best revenge is letting evil destroy itself. Near midnight, orange glow lit the northern sky, Hale's ranch burning, taking with it what he thought was salvation. By dawn, he'd be riding hard for the coast and federal marshals who'd received very detailed telegrams. In the McKenna kitchen, Ada helped treat the last of the wounded. William Hale sat quietly in a corner, staring at nothing. She brought him coffee. You did the right thing, she said. Did I? I destroyed my father. No, he destroyed himself. You chose justice over blood. She sat beside him. That takes courage. What happens to me now? I'm a Hale in a valley that hates the name. Ada glanced at Luke, who nodded slightly. You're a young man who stood up when it mattered. The association will remember that. There's land enough for someone willing to work it honest. William's eyes filled. I don't deserve... None of us deserve grace, Maureen said from the doorway. That's why it's called grace. You'll work the Santos ranch Maria's husband died last winter. She needs help. You'll earn your place. As dawn broke, a rider brought news. Baron Hale had been arrested in Cheyenne, trying to board a train with false papers. The federal warrant had reached the authorities just in time. The valley erupted in celebration. At the double bar, exhausted defenders embraced, cried, laughed. They'd won more than water rights, they'd won their future. Luke found Ada on the porch, watching the sun rise over Sawyer Creek. It's over, he said. The fighting? Yes, the work's just beginning. She gestured toward the valley. Rebuilding, reorganizing, making sure this never happens again. We'll do it together, all of us. He paused. Ada, what you said before, about waiting until the danger passed. She turned to face him. Luke, I know, still not the right time. You'll want to get the school established. I need to heal properly. The ranch needs attention. He smiled. I'm learning patience. You're a good teacher. The best teachers are always learning too, she said softly. Emily appeared in the doorway. Ma says breakfast is ready, and Luke, riders are coming. Looks like the marshal's party. The day blurred into meetings, statements, legal procedures. Marshal Briggs was thorough, collecting testimony from everyone. The evidence William provided was damning. Hale would likely hang for the murders he'd ordered. That evening, as the marshal's party prepared to leave with their prisoners, Briggs approached Ada. Miss Whitfield, I'll need you to testify at the trial. Your documentation of the water rights issue is crucial. Of course. Might take months. Federal court in Helena. He tipped his hat. The territory owes you thanks. Not many would have stood up like you did. After he left, Ada found herself surrounded by ranch families wanting to discuss the school, the association, the future. She answered questions, made plans, felt herself truly becoming part of the community fabric. Late that night, she walked down to the creek. The water ran clear and steady, no longer threatened by greed or violence. She thought of all that had changed since that snowy night when she dragged a wounded stranger into her cabin. Couldn't sleep either, Luke's voice came from behind her. Too much to think about. She didn't turn, but felt him move to stand beside her. Everything's different now. Better different. Yes, she looked at him then. I came west running from something. Now I'm running towards something. What's that? Purpose, community, maybe more. Luke stepped closer. Ada, I promised to wait, and I will. But I need you to know what I feel isn't about gratitude or proximity or shared danger. It's about the woman who sees solutions where others see problems, who stands for justice even when it costs her, who makes everyone around her better. Ada's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady. That's a lot to live up to. You already do. He touched her hand gently. I'll court you proper when you're ready. Sunday dinners, church socials, whatever it takes. But I wanted you to know where I stand. She turned her hand to lace their fingers together. I know where you stand. Luke McKenna. You stand for what's right, even when it's hard. You protect what matters. You learn and grow and admit when you're wrong. She squeezed his hand. Those are qualities worth considering in a partner. Partner, he repeated. I like that word. So do I. They stood together watching the water flow. Hands linked. Futures intertwining like the streams that fed Sawyer Creek. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, trials to attend. Schools to build. Communities to strengthen. But tonight, in the quiet aftermath of victory, two people who'd found each other in the midst of chaos allowed themselves to hope for something more than survival. Your lips belong to me tonight, Luke had said once in fever and pain, now clear-eyed and healing. He understood the truth: nothing belonged to anyone by force or claim, but what was freely given, what was earned through respect and partnership and love, that was worth everything. The war for water was over. The campaign for hearts was just beginning. The spring festival transformed Dusty Creek from a hardscrabble frontier town into something approaching civilization. Bunting stretched between buildings, tables groaned under the weight of shared meals, and fiddle music drifted on the warm breeze. The whole valley had gathered ranchers, townspeople, Mexican families, even some reformed members of Hale's old gang who'd chosen honest work over running. Ada stood before the newly painted schoolhouse, watching children of all backgrounds race through the dusty street together. 6 months had passed since Hale's arrest, and the changes ran deeper than fresh paint and new buildings. "Never thought I'd see the day," Judge Watson said beside her. He'd been replaced after the corruption investigation, but had stayed in town, working as a clerk and trying to rebuild his reputation. Mexicans and whites at the same festival, women voting in association meetings, a proper school for all children. "Change happens when people decide it should." Ada replied, "Sometimes it just takes a push." "Or a shove," he said wryly. "You and young McKenna surely provided that." Across the square, Luke stood with a group of ranchers, but his eyes found hers often. They'd kept to their agreement: proper courtship, nothing rushed, Sunday dinners at the Double Bar M, chaperoned rides to see the wildflowers, long conversations on the porch while Maureen knitted nearby. The whole valley watched their slow dance toward each other with fond amusement. Miss Ada, Maria Santos, approached with her youngest. "The baby's been fussing all week. Could you look?" Ada had become the valley's unofficial medical advisor alongside her teaching duties. She examined the infant with gentle hands, recognized the signs of teething, and prescribed willow bark tea and cold cloths. "Gracias," Maria said. "You save us the long ride to town for the doctor. Bring her by the school tomorrow if she's still fussing." Ada tickled the baby's chin, earning a gummy smile. "How's William doing at your place?" Maria's expression softened. "He works hard, never complains. The children like him." She lowered her voice. "He still has nightmares about his father, but time will help." William Hale had indeed proven himself over the winter, working dawn to dusk, learning Spanish from the Santos children, using his education to help neighbors with legal documents. The name Hale was slowly losing its poison in the valley. Marshal Briggs approached, tipping his hat. "Miss Whitfield, thought you'd want to know Baron Hale was convicted on all counts. He'll hang next month." Ada felt no joy at the news, only a sense of justice completed. His son testified honest. Jury took that into account regarding any claims on the estate. Briggs smiled. "Young William's free and clear. What's left after settlements will help rebuild what his father destroyed." The marshal moved on, and Ada found herself swept into the festival's rhythm. She judged the pie contest, diplomatically declaring a 3-way tie, helped organize the children's races, and partnered with different ranchers for the dancing as the afternoon wore on. But as evening approached and Chinese lanterns were lit against the darkening sky, Luke appeared at her elbow. "Miss Whitfield, might I have this dance?" "Why, Mr. McKenna, I thought you'd never ask properly." He led her into the square where other couples swayed to a slow waltz. His hand at her waist was warm and steady, their steps perfectly matched after months of learning each other's rhythms. "Whole valley's watching?" he murmured. "Let them." She was tired of being careful, tired of measured distances. "Unless it bothers you?" "Nothing about being seen with you could bother me." His green eyes held that intensity she'd first seen in her cabin. "Ada, we've done this right. Been patient, proper, given folks time to accept us both. But I need to know, is your heart any clearer than it was 6 months ago?" She considered the question seriously, as she did everything. 6 months ago, I was still running from Boston, still proving I belonged here. Now. She looked around at the celebrating crowd. the integrated families, the school she'd built. Now I'm not running from or to anything. I'm simply where I want to be. And personally, his voice dropped lower, not as the teacher or association organizer, as Ada. As Ada, she met his eyes fully. I've spent 6 months watching you rebuild your family's legacy while making room for new ideas. Seeing you listen to opinions that challenge you, work alongside men who once served your enemy, court me like I'm something precious while respecting my independence. She smiled. My heart's perfectly clear. Luke McKenna. He stopped dancing, right there in the middle of the square. Clear enough to marry me. The music stuttered to a halt. Every eye in Dusty Creek turned toward them. Ada felt she should be embarrassed by the public proposal, but all she felt was rightness. Here, she asked. Now in front of everyone. In front of our community, he corrected. The people we've bled for, built with, plan to raise children among, unless you'd prefer somewhere private. No, she touched his face, no longer caring about propriety. This is perfect. Yes, Luke. Clear enough to marry you. The square erupted. Cheers, applause, good-natured ribbing from the ranchers, tears from some of the women. Emily rushed to embrace Ada while Maureen gripped her son's shoulders, eyes bright. About damn time, Caleb called out, earning a swat from his wife. Father Miguel stepped forward, smiling. Shall we make it official today? The whole valley is here to witness. Ada looked at Luke, saw her own joy reflected. Why wait, unless you had your heart set on something formal? I had my heart set on you saying yes. Everything else is details. And so, as the sun set over Dusty Creek, Ada Whitfield married Luke McKenna in the town square. She wore her festival dress blue cotton with small flowers rather than white silk. Their witnesses were weathered ranchers and Mexican farmers rather than Boston society. The music was fiddles and guitars rather than organs. It was perfect. Father Miguel spoke the words in English and Spanish, both, when he reached the vows. Ada's voice carried clear and strong. I take you, Luke, as my partner in all things, to build with, dream with, stand with against whatever comes, to share water in drought and warmth in winter, laughter in peace and courage in conflict. Luke's vows came from the heart. I take you, Ada, as my equal and my inspiration, to listen when you speak, support when you lead, and love you with the same fierce devotion I give this land constant, necessary, and eternal. When Father Miguel pronounced them married, Luke didn't wait for permission. He pulled Ada close and kissed her thoroughly, earning whoops from the crowd. My lips belong to you tonight, he whispered against her ear. Call back to that fevered promise months ago. And every night, she whispered back, partner. The celebration continued long into the evening. Tables were pushed together for a massive shared meal. Gifts appeared hand-sewn quilts, preserved foods, promises of help with a house of their own. The Mexican families performed traditional dances while the ranch families contributed jigs and reels. William Hale approached hesitantly during a quiet moment. Mrs. McKenna feels strange to say that I wanted to thank you for believing I could be better than my name. You believed it first. Ada said, we just gave you the chance to prove it. He handed her an envelope. Wedding gift. It's the deed to your old cabin land. I bought it from the territorial office. Thought you might want to build a proper school there, or just keep it as a reminder. Ada's throat tightened. That cabin had been her refuge, her turning point. William, this is too much. It's not enough, but it's a start. He managed a smile. Besides, Maria's teaching me that holding on to guilt helps no one. Better to build something good. As midnight approached, Luke and Ada finally slipped away from the celebration. They rode back to the Double Bar M under a canopy of stars, her wedding dress tucked up for riding, his arm steady around her waist. No regrets, he asked as they reached the ranch. About marrying you never? She leaned back against him. About doing it so publicly, ask me when the teasing dies down in a decade or two." He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. "Fair enough. Though I warn you, ranch families have long memories for a good story." They'd prepared a small cabin on the property for their privacy, close enough to the main house for convenience, but separate enough for a newly married couple. As Luke carried her over the threshold, Ada marveled at how different this felt from her last new beginning. Then she'd been alone, afraid, running. Now she was home, loved, building. "What are you thinking?" Luke asked, setting her down gently. "About circles. How I came here to hide and ended up in the most public position possible. How you were shot by enemies and healed by a stranger who became your wife. How water brought us together and nearly tore the valley apart. And now the circles close and new ones begin." She turned in his arms. "Luke, there's something I should tell you. I wasn't sure until recently, but—" His eyes widened with hope and concern. "Ada, we should probably add a room to this cabin come winter. Babies need space." The joy on his face was worth keeping the secret these past weeks. He spun her around, laughing, then set her down carefully as if she might break. "How long have you known?" "A month, maybe more. I wanted to be sure. Wanted to tell you at the right moment. Our wedding night seems pretty right." He kissed her softly, reverently. "A baby. Our baby." "The first of the next generation," Ada said. "Born free of old feuds, raised with all the valley's children as equals. The future we fought for." They stood together in their new home, holding each other in dreams of tomorrow. Outside, Sawyer Creek flowed steady and free, no longer a source of conflict but of life. The Water Association's charter hung framed on the wall, a reminder of what cooperation could achieve. "I love you," Luke said simply. "Have since you bullied me into living in that frozen cabin." "I love you too," Ada replied, "even if you did bleed all over my last good petticoat." Their laughter mingled with the night sounds of the ranch cattle lowing, horses nickering, the eternal whisper of water over stone. Somewhere in town, their wedding celebration probably continued. Tomorrow would bring congratulations, gentle teasing, and the 1,000 small tasks of building a life together. But tonight was theirs alone. Tonight, the schoolteacher who'd fled Boston and the rancher who'd nearly died for water rights began their shared future. It would not always be easy. Drought would come again. Conflicts would arise. The work of progress never ended. Yet as Ada fell asleep in her husband's arms, she knew they would face it all together. The valley had taught them that water shared was water multiplied, that different voices made harmony possible, that love was not possession but partnership. The circle was complete. The new one beckoned, bright with promise. 5 years had transformed Dusty Creek from a collection of scattered ranches into a thriving community. The spring of 1895 brought wildflowers in abundance, painting the valley in yellows and purples that stretched to the horizon. Ada McKenna stood in the doorway of the new schoolhouse built on the site of her old cabin, watching children of all backgrounds race through the meadow during recess. "Mama, look!" 4-year-old Grace McKenna ran up, clutching a handful of lupines. "For your desk." Ada knelt to accept the flowers, tucking a strand of her daughter's dark hair behind her ear. Grace had Luke's green eyes and her mother's determined chin, a combination that promised interesting years ahead. "They're beautiful. Sweetheart, why don't you put them in water? Show Tommy Santos how he's learning his letters today." Grace scampered off, already the little teacher. Ada smiled, remembering her own first days in this valley alone, afraid, certain she'd never belong. Now she couldn't imagine being anywhere else. "Hey, Mrs. McKenna." William Hale approached, no longer the shamefaced boy who'd betrayed his father, but a confident young man. "The school board meeting is tonight. Maria wanted to confirm you'll present the expansion plans." "Of course." Ada stood, brushing dust from her skirts. How many students are we expecting next term? 43 enrolled so far. The Peterson family's moving in from Nebraska, 5 children, and the Chen family from the railroad camp expressed interest. We'll need another teacher soon. Ada made a mental note. Perhaps that young woman from Denver who wrote Miss Sullivan. I'll add it to the agenda. William smiled. Maria sends her regards, by the way, and her thanks. Young Roberto's reading has improved tremendously since you started the evening sessions. As William left, Ada reflected on the changes 5 years had wrought. The young man who'd arrived bearing his father's sins now served as secretary for both the school board and the Water Association. His marriage to Maria Santos last summer had raised few eyebrows. The valley had learned to judge people by their actions, not their names or origins. The school bell summoned students back inside. Ada taught the afternoon session history and literature for the older children while her assistant, Emily McKenna, handled arithmetic with the younger ones. Luke's sister had grown into a gifted educator, patient with struggling students yet challenging to the bright ones. Remember, Ada told her class, history isn't just dates and battles. It's understanding why people made the choices they did and how those choices shape the world we live in. Like the water war, asked Samuel Pruitt, now 13 and sharp as a tack. Exactly like the water war. Who can tell me what we learned from that conflict? Hands shot up Anglo and Mexican, ranchers' children and townspeople's, even Shai Chen Li in the back row. The discussion that followed would have warmed any teacher's heart. These children understood cooperation, justice, and community in ways their parents had learned through blood and struggle. After school, Ada walked the familiar path to the Double Bar M. The ranch had prospered under Luke's management and the stability brought by the Water Association. New irrigation channels spiderwebbed across the land. The experimental cotton fields showed promise, and the cattle grew fat on well-watered grass. She found Luke at the corral with Caleb, examining a string of horses the Nez Perce had brought to trade. Her husband moved with easy confidence. No trace of the old bullet wounds except a slight stiffness on cold mornings. Ada, he vaulted the fence to greet her. Even after 5 years, his face lit up when he saw her. How was school? Full and fulfilling. We'll definitely need that second teacher. She accepted his kiss, brief but warm. How are the horses? Prime stock. That young stallion would throw fine colts with our mares. He glanced at the house. Grace with Ma. Helping with dinner last I saw, probably covered in flour by now. They walked together toward the main house, Luke's arm comfortable around her waist. The evening ritual of family dinner had become sacred time, Maureen still presiding, but increasingly willing to let Ada take the lead. Letter came from Helena. Luke said, the territorial governor wants to tour the valley. Seems our Water Association has become a model others want to copy. We should involve the whole community. Show him how everyone contributes. Already thought of that. Town council meets tomorrow to plan the visit. He squeezed her shoulder. Your idea has spread far beyond Dusty Creek. Mrs. McKenna. Our idea, she corrected. None of this works without everyone buying in. The main house welcomed them with cooking smells and Grace's laughter. Maureen had aged gracefully. Her iron-gray hair now silver, her strong hands gentled by grandmotherhood. She looked up from the stove where Grace stood on a stool, carefully stirring something. There's my girls, Luke said, scooping up his daughter. What's for dinner? Little cook. Stew, Grace announced. I put in carrots and potatoes and helped Grandma with the biscuits. She's a natural, Maureen said fondly. Takes after both her parents, determined to do everything herself. They gathered around the large table family and extended family, as Caleb and his wife often joined them. Conversation flowed easily, touching on ranch business, school matters, and community news. This was what Ada had never known she was looking for, not just a husband or a home, but a place in something larger than herself. After dinner, as Maureen told Grace stories and Luke reviewed association documents, Ada stepped onto the porch. The evening air carried the scent of sage and distant rain. Lights twinkled in the valley below, other families finishing their own dinners, living their own dreams made possible by shared water and mutual respect. "Penny for your thoughts." Luke joined her, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. "Remembering that night you said my lips belonged to you." He chuckled. "Fever talking, though the sentiment was real enough." "It was the presumption I objected to, not the sentiment." She leaned into him. "You learned better. You taught me better, among other things." He was quiet for a moment. "Any regrets you could have gone back to Boston, taught in proper schools, lived an easier life?" Ada turned to face him. "In Boston, I was tolerated when convenient, discarded when not. Here, I'm necessary. My work matters. My voice counts." She touched his face. "Besides, Boston never had you." "Sweet talker," he accused fondly. "Learned from the best. You courted me with water rights and committee meetings." Their laughter drifted across the darkening range. Inside, Grace's voice rose in protest against bedtime. Normal, precious sounds of a life built carefully and well. "The governor's visit," Luke said eventually. "It's recognition of what you started. The association, the integrated school, women voting on water issues, none of that happens without you pushing for it." "I was just the catalyst. The valley was ready to change." "Maybe, but catalysts matter." He kissed her temple. "You mattered. Still do." A rider approached young Tom Morrison, Jr., carrying messages between ranches. "Evening, Mr. McKenna, Mrs. McKenna. Association reminder for tomorrow. And Miss Emily asked me to give you this." Ada opened the note from her sister-in-law. "She's had a marriage proposal? Robert Carlson." "About time. They've been making eyes at each other for 2 years. Luke grinned. "Another wedding to plan." "Another generation settling in." Ada folded the note carefully. "Your father would be proud. The ranch thriving, the valley united, his children happy. He'd be proud of you too, the woman who saved his son and then saved the whole damn valley." "Language. Mr. McKenna. What if Grace hears—" "Then she'll learn her mother performs miracles that deserve strong language." They went inside to tuck their daughter into bed. Grace demanded a story, and Ada told her favorite about a princess who rescued a prince from a snowstorm, and together they saved their kingdom from a water-stealing dragon. "Did they live happy ever after?" Grace asked sleepily, though she knew the answer. "They lived," Ada said softly. "They worked hard and loved deeply and made their kingdom better for everyone. Happiness came from that." "Good story," Grace murmured, already drifting off. In their own room later, Ada brushed her hair while Luke wound his pocket watch. Comfortable routines of a marriage that had deepened from desperate attraction to steady partnership. "William asked about another teacher," she said. "We're growing faster than expected." "Good problems to have. You want to bring in this Miss Sullivan?" "If she's suitable, Emily could help train her." Ada set down her brush. "Luke, I've been thinking, what if we established a proper teachers' college train educators for the whole territory?" He turned, intrigued. "Big dream. We've accomplished bigger. The association worked because we thought beyond immediate needs. Education's the same, think beyond one school, one town." "You'd run it. Help establish it. Find the right people. Create something lasting." She met his eyes in the mirror. "What do you think?" "I think," he said, crossing to stand behind her, "that you've never had a small dream in your life, and I love that about you." His hands on her shoulders were warm, familiar. In the mirror, she saw themselves no longer the desperate young teacher and the wounded rancher's son, but partners weathered by shared struggles and strengthened by shared victories. "We've built something good here," she said softly. We have, and we're not done yet. Outside their window, Sawyer Creek murmured its eternal song. The sound that had once meant conflict now meant life, continuity, hope. The Water Association's windmill turned lazily, pumping precious liquid to storage tanks that would see the valley through any drought. Down in the barn, the new foal whinnied for its mother. In the bunkhouse, ranch hands played cards and told stories. Across the valley, other families settled in for the night, Mexican and Anglo, established and newcomer, all bound by water and community and the radical idea that different people could build something together. Ada rose and went to the window, Luke beside her. The stars stretched endless above the Montana plains. Same stars that had watched her arrive scared and alone, watched her fight for justice and acceptance, watched her find love and purpose in the last place she'd expected. No regrets, she said, answering his earlier question more fully. Not one. This is home. For always. For always. They stood together in the quiet night, man and wife, teacher and rancher, dreamers and builders. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, it always did. The governor's visit to plan, Emily's wedding to arrange, the teacher's college to propose. There would be setbacks and conflicts, because progress was never a straight line. But tonight, in the home they'd built in the valley they'd helped save, Ada and Luke McKenna held each other and their contentment close. They'd learned that love wasn't possession, but partnership, that water shared was community strengthened, that the greatest adventures came from standing your ground and building something worth keeping. The West had tested them with blizzards and bullets, drought and deceit. They'd answered with courage and compassion, stubbornness and hope. And in the end, they'd won more than water rights or land claims. They'd won a future for themselves, for their daughter, for all the children who would learn in integrated classrooms that cooperation was stronger than division. They'd proved that a Boston teacher and a Montana rancher could rewrite the rules of the frontier. Come to bed, Luke said softly. Tomorrow's another day of changing the world. Just the valley, Ada corrected, but she was smiling. Same thing from where I stand. And perhaps he was right. Perhaps every small victory for justice, every child taught to read, every family helped to prosper, perhaps these were how the world changed. One valley, one school, one marriage at a time. Ada McKenna, once Whitfield, teacher and water warrior, mother and wife, dreamer and builder, took her husband's hand and stepped away from the window. Outside, the creek flowed on. Inside, love lived on. The circle complete, the future bright, the story never really ending, just flowing on like water, finding its way, nourishing whatever it touched. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope Ada and Luke's journey touched your heart as much as it touched mine telling it. Where are you listening from today? Drop a comment below and let's connect. I love hearing from listeners all around the world. If you enjoyed this tale of courage, love, and the fight for justice in the Old West, please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts. What was your favorite moment? Did Ada's strength inspire you? Let me know in the comments until our next adventure in the Wild West. Partners,